Ezra chapter 3, the altar rebuilt. So there was a group of people, not just anybody, led by Zerubbabel and Jeshua. Jeshua being son of a priest, so he was the priest, and also Zerubbabel was supposedly a descendant of Jehoiakim, the last Davidic king of Judah that went into exile and into prison in Babylon. So even though he did not come back to claim the monarchy, but he came back as a leader. So you have two important leaders there. Understand that it's not like when Cyrus said, you can go back if you want to, that everybody, yay, let's go home. Jeremiah says, it's going to be a long exile, 70 years. So don't be in a hurry. Get married, have children, have families, do a trade, build houses, and raise animals and farm, and prosper the land that you're exiled in. And that's exactly what they did. So it's not like everybody is running to go back, as the prophets predicted. We're marching on to Zion. Yeah, next year in Jerusalem, we're going back. It was like that at all. But the vision is there. This is building up to it, to the time of Christ, when after Christ, the church grew exponentially. It's like everybody is knocking on the door. Let me in, let me in, let me in. And even today, it is growing. The church, the real church of our Lord Jesus Christ, is growing. Make no mistake, even though the media or other Christians would say, oh, those Christians, those fundamentalists. Something I read from this commentary, how the non-Christian media would define Christians, lump them all group. Oh, those fundamentalists, like it's a bad word. Many things in the Bible they interpret the Bible literally, but many things in the Bible should be interpreted literally. So what's wrong with fundamentalists? But they mean those snake handlers and poison drinkers, which most of us are not. But when you go to a liberal church, which is so prevalent today, even mine, the one I go to, where I have a gay minister, where the church allows gay and lesbian bishops, for crying out loud, and anybody who opposes that position is called a fundamentalist, like it's a bad word. Anyway, I digress. So here in Ezra chapter 3, understand also that the first part of Ezra is not found in it at all. It's only from chapter 7 onwards that it features Ezra. Now it becomes his memoirs, therefore what he came back and remembered. So where does this first part come from? Archival material. I mean, it was already written. He definitely wasn't there with Zerubbabel and Jeshua. So somebody wrote it already of what happened when the first group arrived back. How they, took 4 months to get from Babylon to Judah, to Jerusalem. There was nothing there. Understand also that almost 100 years have passed where there was anything in Judah. It was devastated. So they have to start from scratch, from the ground up. And who are the people there? Remember who? We have gone to all this prophets before. The poor were not taken into exile. Babylonians didn't want the poor, uneducated class. So they remained there, possibly very bitter. And also, people from the northern kingdom moved down to the southern kingdom, because here they all left, their houses there, and their vineyards, their animals. So you just go free for all kind of thing. So who were in the northern kingdom? Understand, under the Assyrian, the Jews were deported, and people from the other parts of the Assyrian Empire went to live in Samaria. So the whole area was Iraq, a mismatch mash of everything. So this group of people that comes back, we've got to be really have God stir in your heart for you to want to make that 4-month trek through the desert to come back to nothing. It's a project of spiritual dimension. Just like all work of God is. It's not like, yay, like a walk in the park. And this chapter 3 would be the last time the honeymoon, the last part of the honeymoon period. After that, it was downhill in the sense that the people who lived there saw what they were doing, and they were jealous, and they were envious or evil or whatever. These were enemies, and they will not sign up to the same spiritual idea of raising a temple again to the God of heaven and a city. Understand that? But regardless, so here we read in chapter 3 that verse 2, they builded the altar of the God of Israel to offer burnt offerings thereon, as it is written in the law of Moses, the man of God. So here, the first order of action was the altar. Well, you can't, to build a temple structure would take too long. So what do? Put stones upon each other, and there you have it, an altar where the burnt offerings could start again. Burnt offerings in the morning, in the evening, and also they could celebrate verse 4, they could celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles, all according to the Torah, to the law of Moses. So the whole idea of altar and temple really is to restart their ancestral worship, that God would come back to be among them. That's just it. As to the walls, it would take 100 years or so later that the walls of the Jerusalem city proper would be started. But here, first order of business was the altar. And so verse 6, from the first day of the 7th month began they to offer burnt offerings unto the Lord, but the foundations of the temple of the Lord was not yet laid. So here, verse 7, now they raised money. They gave money to the masons, to the carpenters, money, meat, drink, and oil to them, so that they could bring the logs, they'd see the wood from Zidon and Tyre through the port of Jaffa port. According to, I think it says here also, Cyrus, king of Persia, when he allowed them to go back, also gave them money to purchase these logs so as to lay the foundations for the temple. So now in the second year of their coming back unto the house of, verse 8, unto the house of God in Jerusalem the second month, began Zerubbabel and Joshua and all the remnant of their brethren and the priests and Levites and all that have come out of the captivity unto Jerusalem, and appointed Levites from 20 years onwards to set about. So you can't just offer burnt offerings up. You've got to have the priest to do it. So they did bring back with them priests, Levites. Remember the previous chapter, they who could prove from that, they who had genealogical records that they were from the Levitical tribe could join them as priests. Otherwise, if you lost that, you lost your right to be a priest. So here, 20 years and onwards, we know in Ezekiel, it's 30 years that you become a priest, because a 25-year-old Ezekiel left for exile, and on his 30th birthday in exile, he was celebrating, hopefully being a priest, but he became a prophet. So here it says they lowered the age limit 20 years because of shortage of people. So now, verse 10, when the builders laid the foundation of the temple, they set the priests. So here it's like, wow, this this is huge. The temple of the Lord is gone, but they're laying it. And we're here in verse 12, even as they lay the foundations, it's worship of God, praising and singing. The ancient people, ancient means the older men, who possibly 70 years of exile, they were very young when they went to exile. They're still alive when they came back. So they would have seen the first temple, the Solomonic temple, and they see it gone, and now a new one is being, the foundation of the new one is being laid, and it's like, whoa, there was loud noises of singing and praising. Jewish worship has singers. You don't just bring the Levites back. Some of them are singers. Some of them play musical instruments, cymbals, clang, 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 clang. So this is worship. So they were doing all that, and they were crying with loud voice, and they were singing. And verse 13, the people could not discern the noise of the shout of joy from the noise of the weeping of the people. For the people shouted with a loud shout, and the noise was heard from afar. Imagine that. I've been to a charismatic church where on Sunday worship, there would be a huge auditorium. You talk of mega churches, this is one of them. 1,000 people. Imagine everyone singing at the top of their lungs, of their. You've got to be one. You cannot comprehend it unless you're there. The singing, and before you know it, huge blobs of hot tears run down your cheek, and it's like the emotions. But like I said, this would be the end of the honeymoon period. Next chapter on until the whole of Ezra, the book of Ezra, into Jeremiah, opposition. Understand that it's all very well to be excited for the work of the Lord, for God and work. And no sooner have you started than opposition. Satan comes to destroy, and depression, and all kinds of troubles. So like I said, this part is archival. It's already written. So Ezra. So most commentators, scholars say the chronicler, somebody who wrote all this down, recorded it. The suspicion is the same person wrote Ezra, Nehemiah, and Chronicles. And the suspicion is that Ezra did it, even though when we read Nehemiah, it does, some parts says first person, I, Nehemiah. That would not be unforeseeable for somebody to write it that way. So it's from archival material the chronicler Ezra, in this case, we think, read through and attach it so as to form a continuous narrative, instead of just started with his memoirs, which came much, much later. In the time of Artaxerxes, understand there's Cyrus' son, which comprises, which lasted for a short period, Darius, Xerxes, and finally Artaxerxes. And he came back in Artaxerxes' time, and you have all these time where the first group came back. So this would have already been written, which he read and attached it to the first part, so that we have a continuous, as far as possible, a continuous narrative, albeit we don't have the whole story, but this is as good as it gets, so that we don't leave out what happened in the interim until the time he came back. So this is what it is, the first part of Ezra.